Let me ask you first of all, Timothy, it looks now that the chance of delaying the treaty through the Czech president is falling away, and we heard just now in the chamber that it's full steam ahead, the Lisbon Treaty is bound to be ratified. What's your reaction to what you've been hearing?
Well, first of all, this full steam ahead situation has been going on now for some months, and I think it was rather arrogant and unacceptable that there should be this, presumption before all the countries have actually finalised their consideration. And we certainly don't have a final decision yet, even. And my view is that, until we do have a final decision on this, I think it's very presumptive, and I condemn that. I think it's wrong.
Well, Nigel, it's pretty clear that...
Look, they've been implementing this thing for the last 18 months anyway. For the Tory party to say we have to wait until there's a final decision, it's happening. We're getting a constitutional treaty. We're weeks away from the whole thing being ratified.
You just want to keep Europe off the agenda as long as possible, don't you?
We've got this position. We've got this position in British politics. People say, well, of course, the European question doesn't really matter. But the question of people being asked and asked their opinions on this does matter. We've got a Labour Party that broke a promise. We've got a Liberal Democrat Party that broke a promise. And we've got a Tory party that just won the European elections saying, vote for us and we'll give you a referendum. And now it's pretty clear there's not a cat's chance in hell of you giving us a referendum.
Yeah, the British Conservatives have been in the limelight, and we're going to come back to you in a minute. But, it's true, you Labour and Liberal Democrats have got off pretty lightly in the last week, actually. Both of you promised a referendum. More importantly, Labour in government. And yet... you didn't deliver.
Well, you've heard it all before. We promised a referendum on a constitution which doesn't exist. It was dropped. We've got a treaty which is boring. People are fed to tears with it, as they should be, because it's not what these people want to stoke up fears and pretend that it is. It's about the internal rule-making of the European Union. And, there are a lot of Irish friends and colleagues that we all know from Britain. No one's bullied them into this decision. And when they were given the chance, they have switched over. There wasn't an increase in the turnout. 20% of people have switched over, despite Nigel Farage being camped out in Dublin, using his party's money to put 1.1 million leaflets through every door in Ireland, and the extreme English nationalism getting together with Sinn Féin and extreme Irish nationalism.
None of that's actually true.
They were the bullies.
None of that's actually
true.
None of that's actually true, Richard. And get back to the point. Your manifesto in 2005 said you would give a referendum on the constitutional treaty, and Lisbon clearly is a constitutional treaty.
Fiona?
Well, we always said that the real referendum is, are we in or are we out? We tried very hard to get that in the House of Commons. We didn't get it because that's what people will actually vote on in the UK. I think that now we have the Lisbon Treaty. We had a very decisive vote in Ireland, very clear vote, a majority of more than 2 to 1, and now we need to get on with implementing the treaty. And I would like to know whether the Conservatives are going to have a referendum, because it's not clear at all. They said they were going to have one, but now we are left with complete confusion about whether they are going to go forward and have one.
Okay, will you answer the question, Timothy?
First of all, it's a little rich for these people to talk in this way. The Labour Party talking about the Constitution being totally different from the treaty. I sat on the convention that drafted that Constitution. I know how near it is to the treaty, so please don't start that one. And as far as the Liberals, as far as the Liberals are concerned, Ming Campbell changed the whole basis. Originally they were going to give a proper referendum to people on the text, on what we were going for. Then they decided to change their mind, as Liberals tend to do on a very regular basis, and said, oh, well, no, we'll have a referendum now on whether we're in or out. They knew that was provocative and unnecessary. As far as we're concerned, we do not want a referendum on in or out. We want a referendum on the nature of how Europe is to be run in the future, preferably in relation to the treaty.
But not on the Lisbon Treaty if it is ratified?
If the Lisbon Treaty is ratified, we've made it very... there's nothing waiting to hear what we're doing. And so we've made it very, very clear, William Hague, David Cameron, that if the Lisbon Treaty is fully ratified, we will not let the matters rest. We have a number of issues where we're concerned about the future.
What does that mean, Timothy?
Can I put one question to the Conservatives?
It means precisely what it says.
David Cameron last week said, we've got one policy only, and you've repeated it again.
Yes.
Right? And he said, because he didn't want to interfere or prejudice in the decisions of the other countries, namely the Czech Republic. But that didn't stop him writing to the Czech president, encouraging him not to actually go forward with the ratification of this treaty. This is utter hypocrisy
desperation by the Labour Party.
Reading between
nonsense.
Timothy,
exchanges of letters in the early summer between people in Europe. What the hell's that got to do with it?
How can you say that you won't answer the question? about a
Richard.
referendum
You have nothing
on
to
the
say
basis
about Europe or
that you won't
anything else.
prejudice other countries' choices. It just
Nigel briefly, and then I want
Just
to...
quickly, the Liberal Democrats did Welsh on their promise and then said they'd support an in or out referendum and then voted against that in the House of Lords. So you're all over the place when it comes to this policy. I think, Tim, that saying we will not let matters rest there, saying we'll wait until the thing's over, that is now a threadbare policy. Everybody thinks it's a joke, including most of your party. It's about time we knew where you stood. Are you going to give the British people a chance to have their say or not? That's the question.
No,
yes,
you're
or
as
no?
bad as the people you've just
Yes
been
or no?
criticising. The fact is we have not yet concluded the matters regarding the Lisbon
if
Well, you know very well...
If it is fully ratified, we made our
will there
policy
be a
clear.
referendum? Yes
Well,
or
If
no?
it is
let him
ratified,
answer.
then it is if it is ratified, then the leader of the party, David Cameron, and William Hague, will make it clear where we are going to go next. And that is what is always... Well, no, otherwise you're as bad as the people. You're just criticising people for jumping in ahead of the game.
Yeah, but you know that it would, as Leon Britton,
nonsense.
your Conservative former commissioner said, it would be dotty, he said, to have a referendum once the Lisbon Treaty has been ratified by everyone else. Do you agree with him?
I don't think the word dotty has any modern parlance or relevance at all. What
Well,
is
he
important?
said it.
No,
He
what is,
lives
look,
today.
Well, I don't accept that. What I think is important... No, I don't accept what he said. But
Yeah.
what I do accept is the fact that if the Lisbon Treaty is finally ratified, then we have got to come forward to the British people with a clear position on it. And we
Okay.
will do so. We said we would do it certainly at the latest in our manifesto for the next general election. But I'm quite convinced that we are going to look very carefully at this, work out what is good for the British people in terms of Europe, and then we will want to consult. And how we consult is a matter we have to decide.
Okay, well, let's assume for a minute, and that's a big assumption because we haven't had a general election yet, that maybe you win that election. Can I just ask you, if you are going to have a referendum or some kind of process by which you consult the British people with the view to renegotiating Britain's relationship with the EU, policy by policy, which is what David Cameron's talked about, so perhaps changing what you do or what you don't do on employment, social security, are you actually saying you can do that?
Of course you can renegotiate.
Can you,
of course
though?
you can renegotiate. Anytime. We've done it before. I mean, we renegotiated in relation to the budgets. We've renegotiated on things.
Obligation.
I wonder
in
whether,
any
in
event,
fact, you're misleading people, suggesting that you can. Fiona, what do you think?
Absolutely. We saw what happened with John Major and BSE. If you're one of 27 and you stamp your little foot, I mean, yes, you may be able to negotiate a tiny little bit, but you will lose 26 other points at the same time. And what I want to know is what they're going to do, the Conservatives, now that we will have the Lisbon Treaty and there is a roadmap for coming out of Europe for those people who want to come out of Europe.
Unacceptable.
I want to know whether Conservative candidates at the general election will say whether they are going to pursue that roadmap and pursue coming out of Europe. It's clear from opinion polling that some of them do favour that view, and I think we should hear what they're going to do
Unlike Nigel,
about
we
Lisbon.
do not have a policy of leaving the European Union.
But
that is not
isn't the-
that is not the party's position, and nor is it going to be.
No, but isn't the natural conclusion of what you're suggesting actually putting Britain in a position where it might leave the European Union, which is what Nigel
This is
wants?
the whole deceit, isn't it? The Tory party relies on millions of Eurosceptic votes by pretending it's Eurosceptic, but in reality it's not. You cannot... How could you? We just agreed round this table that it's full steam ahead. You know, we're pushing on in the European Union with new policies in all sorts of areas. Justice and home affairs, foreign embassies.
But to you
cannot
Nigel,
attend a
the
meeting.
word Eurosceptic to you means you have to leave Europe. To me, it means actually questioning
But, Tim,
Europe,
people are
changing
voting-
Europe the
people
way you
are
would like to
voting
see
for
it
your
changed.
false
Timothy, I think we have to accept in the run-up to the general election that there is this dangerous tendency within the Tory party, I hope it doesn't win, but who would go ahead with a second referendum, who would go ahead with this suicide strategy of negotiation which can't work, would tear up the social chapter and with it workers' rights, and would actually lead us into a situation where if that referendum were to vote no against a ratified treaty, there would be a constitutional crisis, and a lot of people who sit behind Timothy Kirkhope in the Tory party would get what they want, which is an agenda to put Britain as an associate member of the European
but Richard,
Union.
you should not
And that's
talk about...
quite how stakes,
Don't you talk-
how high the stakes
don't
will
you
be
talk to
at
me
the general
about-
election.
don't you talk
And
to
you
me
should be
about-
honest
Hold on a
about
minute.
it.
Don't talk to me about tendencies. I mean, the Labour Party's been riddled with tendencies over the years.
We
of
got
all
rid of
kinds.
ours.
Oh, you got rid of
failed
yours.
to get
didn't
rid
you?
of
yours.
Yes,
Just
we don't
make
have
the
these
point. Just
tendencies. We have
respond to the
policies,
question.
and we have, I think, a clear position. And I see nothing in any way contradictory about what we are saying. If the thing is ratified, and we obviously never wanted this treaty, we've said so consistently, if it is ratified, we will not let matters rest. We want to renegotiate. We want our position with Europe to be the sort of position that we think the British people can live
Okay, Nigel,
with.
do you think that's possible?
No, it's not possible. It's not credible. We've got a very, very clear choice here. Either we accept European Union membership, we accept the constitutional treaty, we accept that we're moving on to a European foreign policy, a European army, and all of those things, or we say,
well,
this is not in
our
our national interest, and we should
Rubbish.
divorce ourselves from
Nonsense.
it. The third way that the Tories are putting forward doesn't exist.